Hi, friends. I love the.
Mm.
I don't know if that's a dog.
Wait, can we all do that for this meeting?
Amazing. Do
That's fine, right?
that. Well, hello. I think it might just be the two of you. Monty texted and said that he was not available,
Okay.
and I have not heard from Donovan.
Okay. We don't really have to meet any sort of, I mean, we technically can't meet quorum because we don't have enough people, so we can just see what we can accomplish today.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I'm still like trying to get used to, yeah, how to run these meetings. But
Yeah.
I think that we should probably go ahead and start with roll call just for formalities, and then I'll read the meeting rules, and then we can get started with the agenda if
Okay.
that's okay with you. Okay.
That's good. Okay, we'll call this meeting to order at 2:02. We'll do roll call first. So I have Elizabeth O'Neill.
Here.
Um, I am here, and that is it. I'll hand
Amazing.
it over to Yulia for the meeting procedures.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. A couple of notes about this meeting. This is a virtual subcommittee meeting of the Affordable Housing Advisory Board. No action will be taken at this meeting. Public comment will be accepted on the regular agenda items. General public comment will be accepted at the end of the meeting. When the chair calls for public comment, please raise your virtual hand to indicate you wish to speak. Please state your name before speaking. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and now I'll turn it back to the chair.
Leah. Okay, we'll go ahead and move over to our agenda items, and we'll start with agenda item B1, review the subcommittee purpose and goals. And I will hand that over to Leah to walk us through.
I should have attached that to the agenda.
Okay.
I'm sorry. um, but I will read those goals right now. Um, So the goal of the subcommittee is to develop recommendations for the AHAB and SETI Commission to better align the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to achieve towards achieving affordable housing goals as identified in A Place for Everyone. The subcommittee will do this by being intentional and funding projects that align with the goals and provide the highest community good, requesting proposals for specific affordable housing development projects targeted to meet community need, and supporting developers in achieving goals by packaging affordable housing trust funds and city incentives for project viability. And I will put those in the chat and be sure to add those to the meeting minutes.
Thank you, Leah. With that and understanding our purpose and our goals, we're moved to the second agenda item, which is to review the proposed subcommittee project timeline.
So again, probably should have put that on the agenda itself. I apologize. We'll put that in the note in the chat and on the minutes. So the proposed timeline is so in December 2025 to recommend a special meeting of the AHAB to discuss the initial proposal and get initial approval from the AHAB to move forward with an RFP concept and to agree and discuss on set-asides for non-development projects. Then in February, it's proposed to hold an AHAB retreat or work session to come to agreement on the goals and strategies that would be in that RFP. March, propose and come to a decision on the specifics of that RFP that will be for 2027 funding. April, review and get feedback on the draft from the AHAB. May 2026, take it the final product to the AHAB and move to approve the 2027 RFP and NOFO, and then in June 2026 release the RFP and NOFO. So if there are any changes, I'm happy to make note of that.
Looks right to me.
Do we need
I
to, sorry, this is Beth. Do we need to clarify within the timeline, like when we're going to the commission for approval?
Yes, that would be helpful, wouldn't
Okay.
it?
Yeah, I think it would help keep me, remind me of the timeline of that.
Yeah. So it kind of depends on when AHAB meets in May. Should we put, just for safe measure, that we will get commission approval in June? That,
Yeah, I think that would be
okay.
full. Would it have to be just in order to fit with our, I guess our current timeline, would it have to be like the earliest June meeting for city commission to approve that? I guess
Yeah,
my only concern that could arise potentially is that if commission wants to somehow or some way discuss that further, and how is that going to push our timeline for applications?
that's a good
Right.
point.
Would May maybe be maybe safe is not the best word, but maybe give us a little bit more time, um, just in case there needs to be another meeting in between that from city commission.
Yeah, that works. And I wonder if, um, it would be beneficial actually to give them a heads up, like after the AHAB approves. I mean, they should see it in the meeting minutes, but after the AHAB, if the AHAB approves moving to an RFP, then putting that on perhaps the city manager's report or something, just to give them a heads up, and then they can let us know if they don't want to proceed, or maybe it could go on consent agenda. So I'll add that to our timeline.
Yeah, I like that also because I would hate for AHAB to do all of this work coming up with an RFP model and doing that to then have the commission at the end be like, wait a minute, we don't want to do RFP. So
We know that there, just from your conversations, Leah, that there's at least some staff, it's maybe in the city manager's office, that might be good. This might be a change that we could have success in having conversation with, I guess, to say. Um, my other question is very, very early in the timeline. I know a meeting will need to be called in December. Is that something, maybe, I know we have next steps at the end, but is that something we'll need to propose at our next AHAB meeting? Okay.
Yeah, so I'll be sure and add that to the November agenda. Thanks for noting that. So then so then it sounds like, sorry, circling back to getting initial approval or a heads up to the commission, it sounds like that should happen before, like maybe in January. Does that sound right to both of you?
Yeah, I
Like,
think I think once we get the kind of go ahead from the rest of the board to start moving forward with this process, I think it makes sense to then signal to commission that this is something that we're working on. Is there
any
anything?
other items for our calendar, or like logistical things that we need to plan for?
Not that I can think of right now. This might shift, of course, as we figure it out. Well, okay. Well, if we feel good with the timeline as it stands right now, we can go ahead and move to our third agenda item, which is to review and discuss the subcommittee work plan, which falls pretty much in line with our timeline, I think. Is it helpful to read those out loud, or do we feel like we can just look at the agenda and have any discussion if need be, if anything's missing or if there's points of clarification or addition to our particular work plan?
No, like I think I would interpret kind of the way that the work plan and timeline kind of come together would be that like basically items 1, 2, and 3 are what need to be basically completed in advance of our December 2025 special meeting. And so really, and then it kind of goes pretty in alignment through there, I think.
I agree. Yeah, I think if we can commit to 1, 2, and 3 by our last meeting, which will probably be in November, I think because we outlined, I remember Leah, you outlined some of our next meetings. I can't remember exactly when we decided upon those, once a month during this time.
Yep.
So we'll have at least 3 meetings between then and now to cover these 3 items. So cool. Oh, awesome. Thank you. So I don't have any additions to this. I think this is exactly what we have been thinking about over the last several months. So I know we only have half of our committee members here. So if Leah, I guess if there's any additions to the work plan, that's also pretty adaptable, right? That's not something that if Donovan or Monty want to add to. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And if it would be helpful, I can like make a Gantt chart or just put date next to the work plan item so we have an idea of timeline. Okay, cool. I'll have that for the
Cool.
next meeting.
Awesome. Well, great discussion and review, y'all. We'll move on right through to agenda item 4. So this agenda item is we're receiving examples of requests for proposals or RFPs from different communities. This is our request from Leah to kind of give us some examples of what exists in maybe other affordable housing advisory boards or other communities who are doing very specific project-based work around affordable housing. Lawrence is in here as well. And I think, is it just like a note of comparison? I'm assuming of like how our particular RFP process looks like. Okay.
Yeah, and the city did an RFP for development of downtown lots, and one of the projects that was requested was affordable housing. So I thought it would just be a good benchmark. It wasn't very specific in terms of like the type of affordable housing and like the level of detail we want to get to, but I still think it'll be a helpful kind of benchmark for us to look at.
So I know this is our space for discussion. I do feel a little lopsided there only being like 2 of us here to have a full discussion on each of these documents. I'll just personally, I started looking at like the specific RFP, like content of what the objectives were for each of the ones that are listed on here. And so I just have like super preliminary comments. I don't know if that's helpful to put in this space or if it's maybe more, Beth, like we can talk about maybe between now and the September meeting. My idea would be like assign a few of these to each of us to kind of look through and pull out some things that we liked from each of them. Because I think this is like, could be a template for how we start constructing our draft RFP. So that was my initial thought outside of like very specific things that I saw in some of them.
Yeah, I think that plan sounds good because yeah, I like skimmed through each of them, but they're obviously each pretty robust documents, and I didn't do detailed analyses of each of them. So I think I really like your idea of kind of assigning out to kind of do that deeper dive. I think it makes it a bit more approachable, and maybe if there were specific, I don't know, prompts or questions like that we should be looking to for our analyses, so we're coming back with, you know, similar discussion points might be helpful. I do also just want to say I love that you included like a model like RFO that was like a boilerplate like template for like some things you could include. I was like, oh, this is great, because even though it wasn't specific to a particular one, it, like, I love how they just made this general template that we could potentially adapt as well. So
I liked that toolbox, little toolkit
yeah,
from Massachusetts. That
yeah.
was cool. So I wonder then maybe we can think about, and Leah, maybe your expertise on this of like, I'm thinking of maybe what the city of Lawrence would require for an RFP, if there's any specifics that would just kind of go into all of their general RFPs, if that link, I mean, obviously we have an example here, but if that language is across the board, that obviously will kind of be our starting point when making sure we're in compliance with whatever city process is. The other piece of this that I'm thinking about that was consistent over a lot of these were, and something that perhaps our September 17th meeting we can talk about. We started thinking about different city properties, and then we talked about maybe the entire board reviewing some city-owned pieces of land, and starting to determine feasibility of development. I think that is going to be maybe not something that we figure out in the immediate, but something that I'm thinking pretty deeply on, that if we start writing this, do we have a very particular space in mind? Do we have several? Some of these have like different areas that they want to focus on. Some are like, this is what we're already developing. There's one that's like very similar to the Clinton expansion project of Delmar Place, where it was like a already existing senior community, and they had land that they could develop on. So it was incredibly similar. So I think as we're reviewing these, maybe start thinking about how wide of a scope we want the RFP to be. And also when we think about the land, I really am curious to consider how we collaborate with other departments in the city to make this more accessible, and how we can not necessarily expedite the development, but make it a little bit less strenuous for the person who is developing. Like, if there is a city-owned piece of land that they're willing to utilize for this development, are there any infrastructure considerations we need? What can we think about what some of the barriers would be? Because I think as we get to maybe that first draft at the beginning of the year, and we maybe start narrowing, those are things that I want to keep in a top of head, so we're not putting ourselves into like, this is the one property we want, and then we realize that, you know, even the funding that we have wouldn't be able to scrape the surface of that. So I wonder, I don't know how to put that in a motion while we're reviewing, but perhaps when we're looking over these projects, kind of seeing what specifications they have around the pieces of land that they're offering, what things are already in place. So perhaps when we're thinking about developing the RFP, we can also kind of match that specificity.
So
I just
like if
worry, yeah,
testing and buildability of the property had already been determined in advance, or is that
right,
something that,
right,
you know, like those types of things?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just see the pros of something like the Clinton Place expansion, because it was already pretty well, you know, it was pretty well as far as infrastructure is kind of ready to build on. That got done relatively quickly. There was also other funding um, that group received to make that happen, but that's just something that's on my mind. So I don't know, Leah, is there maybe questions in your mind that we could consider posing as folks reflect over these documents?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm like looking at my other screen because I was looking for a document that former assistant manager Diane Stoddard had created for the AHAB, well, for the city commission. I think it was in like 2021. She developed a memo with a list of city-owned properties that could be potentials for affordable housing development. I'm having a hard time finding it now. We had to reorganize our files, but I'll find that. And I think that would be a good place to start for this group to start looking at. And out of that list, there were two that had sort of more short term or immediate viability, and one was already enacted upon, the Bob Billings donation to tenants to homeowners. And the other is the current MSO or traffic. It's in the sorry, I'm trying to remember what the building's actually called. It's like in the Pinckney neighborhood, catty corner from the Pinckney school ish. Anyway, a building that the city will be vacating in the next couple years. Uh, Traffic building, something like that. Anyway, so that might be a good place to start. But I'll bring up that list again and we can review it for the next meeting. And I think that already has some good parameters for this group to look at. And then in terms of like reviewing the other RFPs, maybe right now, if you two are interested, we could just create a list of just some like standard, I don't know, things that we want to look at, and I'll create a document to send out. And just it could even be really simple, like project element, what you like about it, what you don't like about it. I don't know what other categories can be included, but I think it could be pretty simple.
I would think that two things that would be good to compare across it in terms of like what they specified, but also how they discussed it in the RFP would be the period of affordability as well as any like the AMI requirements for the properties.
Yeah, I would also think, just thinking of our current process right now, some of the elements that we score on, if we would want to bring some of that in here. So obviously, affordability, length, and then targeted AMI. I know we'll be reviewing the new dashboard that you've been working on at our next meeting, Leah, at the next larger AHAB meeting. So we can also maybe pull some of that.
Oh,
'Cause I know those are two big ones, but I'm also thinking about accessibility of like how accessible, can we put some parameters around something like universal design? Could we make the determination? I know this was a conversation last round of applications that we're looking for more like multifamily units. Um, maybe less like, I know there is absolutely a need for like individual living apartments and things like that, but I know that was a gap that we were definitely coming into some friction with, as we just weren't seeing that type of project. So I'm also thinking about like the last round of applications. What were some things that we were like, oh, I wish we would have seen that in an application for development? Um, and perhaps looking to see if any of these RFPs are naming some of those with specificity of like, here, in addition to AMI and affordability timeline, we also want to look at these particular project elements that we would like to design within the RFP. However, you can ask that question in less than the like 100 words I just said.
Cool.
Well, and I noticed like some of them had requirements and then preferences. So,
Yeah.
and so that perhaps so that if you didn't get an outstanding proposal for a 3 or 4 bedroom unit, but it was still your preference to fund that, it didn't eliminate the potential to fund 2 bedroom units. I'm just making something up. But so I think thinking about whether we want to also do it based on requirements or just requirements and preferences and how we would manage that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair, as we're looking at this, if there are examples of that structure, because I think it's fair to say that while we should have some pretty strong requirements as affordability, because that's in our name, sometimes the other things, while we could score higher on, may deter developers from answering the RFP. But I think thinking about some of our board members really considering ensuring the accessibility of properties, not just like physical accessibility, but folks who have been intentionally historically been left out of accessing affordable housing or housing period. How are we sticking to that and trying to dance around the language that I know is complicated to say right now? But what are some of those elements that we can bring in? Are there any examples within these projects that kind of name that? I know some of these are obviously before 2026 and the particular executive order that is preventing me from talking the way I want to. But if there's language we can think about there as maybe preferences too. Well, trying to think if there maybe a question would be like, if out of these, are there any unique elements that you would like to pull into our RFP as a question? A lot of these have really good scoring metrics already on here as well that we can start pulling. Cool.
I assume, Leah, that legal will run through any RFP that we draft to make sure all the legalese matches up appropriately. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and one thing that I need to get clear on as well that I'll do before our next meeting is so our purchasing policy requires all RFPs to go through purchasing. And it only allows, like for the housing study, we were only allowed one non-staff city staffer on the committee. Well, obviously that will not work for this type of RFP, and per ordinance, the AHAB is the body that has the recommending power for the trust funds. So, so I think we'll just need to work out those details and figure out what elements of our current RFP policy need to be followed for this and what we can have flexibility on, because it's different than other city RFPs.
Cool. So I guess, which this kind of floats into our fifth agenda item, but thinking about between now and the September 17th meeting, do we want to assign particular RFPs to folks, or do we want to review all of them and answer all these questions, and then compare?
I mean, I think just with feasibility in mind, I think it's probably be more likely that people would be able to do a complete job if we divided them up and assigned. Obviously, it's ideal that everyone does all of them, and I think that could still be encouraged, but if it could be communicated like these are your three that you are really supposed to dig into and collect this information, but you're encouraged to to read all of them and to identify some of these things in each of them.
So maybe 2 or 3 that you're responsible for, maybe reporting on.
Yeah, you're
And
going to be the
take-
expert on those.
Yeah.
So come
Okay.
prepared and ready.
Yeah. Because I think it would be good for our next to have maybe a majority of our next meeting to be those report outs and that, like a deeper discussion on this. And so maybe every person gets like 2 minutes to talk about one of their RFPs or 4 minutes to talk about both. And then we have discussion afterwards about the elements that we liked from each of them. And then maybe starting to put together like a template ourselves in that meeting. Okay. I don't really have a preference for the ones I look over. I don't know, Leah, do you just want to randomly assign the four of us? I know there's an uneven number here too. So 3, 3. Maybe it's like 3, 3, 2, and 2. Because there is an uneven number.
Let's see. Should we take the model RFO out since that's
Okay,
a little
yeah,
different?
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
can do that. Okay, so if we take that one out, 3, 3, 3.
9.
Still a little for 4 people.
Okay.
Which I'm happy to take 3. I can be one of the people that take on reviewing 3 of them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And then maybe everybody else can do 2. Does that work?
Good.
Okay. Okay. Unless anybody's dying to do 3 of them, don't let me be the overachiever.
And
I'll let you be the expert on 3, Marielle. It's okay.
Okay.
I think that we might also just want to think ahead about if Monty and Donovan are not able to commit to doing this, if you two want to spread it out in the course of 2 meetings instead, or
Okay.
I'll send out an email and ask for commitments to doing that. But
Perfect.
yeah, just wanted to think ahead about that.
Yeah. Yeah. We can do the gentle accountability conversation if it gets to that point.
Yeah.
I don't think I mean, knowing both of those people, I don't think we'll have a problem. This might just be like a weird day.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah. Okay, cool. So we'll have Leah assign us how you see fit. And then if we run into any capacity constraints, then I think that's a good idea of maybe splitting them between meetings and
Okay.
taking time. We have some time. So
Yeah. Cool.
okay. Continuing on agenda item number 5, the other task that comes up in my brain is starting that list of properties. Leah, when you see it, just sending it to us so we can just start looking at them.
Yes.
Can we take a field trip and go property visiting as a subcommittee?
That'd be fun. There's some viable ones that we can
Mhm.
see and look at the neighborhoods. That'd be great.
Mhm.
I have a question. Really, I'm sorry. Just on to not trying to get too ahead because I think that's enough work for us between now, but just clarifying when you say evaluate, determine public resource needs and availability to leverage trust funds. Just if you can refresh my brain on what we were thinking when we were saying that. What is that
Well, I guess
mean?
thinking, so we know that we'll have the trust funds
Right.
and I guess determining what other public resources we have. So if we will be able to identify public land, which would require, the city commission approve, it would require, I think, planning, getting on board, looking more closely
Okay.
at that land, then the city commission approving that, likely separate.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. So that's one piece, and that seems to be an element that is common in most of the RFPs, is that they're donating land for it. And then
Yeah.
what other types of city incentives that we can kind of guarantee as a part of the project?
Okay.
Like tax incentives. And again, it's tricky. We've never done this before. Those would also have to be approved separately.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I know this is my brain being into like May of next year,
Mhm.
and all this takes to get to that point. So it doesn't have to be September meeting because I think we already have kind of our assignment for that. But I wonder if it's something like land donation and maybe tax incentives, my I guess, desire to want to notify commission and maybe involve departments feels a little bit more urgent because I
Mhm.
know both of those things would take more time, and I wouldn't want to run into the space where we're like, this RFP is great, and the commission's like, yes, and then we're like, but we need this land, and they're like, well, hold up,
Right.
hold up, hold up. So
Yeah.
has there been a situation where it's been like a preliminary approval of land and then we continue that process? I don't want to put us in a situation where we're naming something
I
that we like
know.
specific and then the time that it takes to go through the proper channels delays us significantly. So
Yeah.
I wonder if mhm, not to throw us through a loop, but this just came to me. I wonder if mm, is December still a good timeline if we make that determination of like here we want to move forward with an RFP process. Here are some of the project ideas we're looking at. Is that between December and May enough time if there was a particular land donation or tax incentives that we would want to include in that? Is that enough time to get that through commission and through the necessary departments to have the RFP in all of its elements finalized by June and
So,
approved?
yeah, that's a good question. I'm wondering that as well. Thinking about my past experience with land donations, there have been two that have happened for affordable housing, and it was like a 2-year process. Um, but I'm wondering if, I mean, my goal, particularly with the proposed incentive policy, is for there to be, more of an all hands on deck sort of commitment to for the city to be more proactive in identifying and getting that process through. I'm wondering if, like, I don't know if, I mean, the first step is absolutely for the AHAB to agree on it, and if so, maybe it's going to the commission with a presentation or a specific, recommendation for approval of um, a commitment to identifying and donating a piece of land, a commitment to moving to an RFP, a commitment to, the different tools that we would need to bundle together to make it possible.
So I think that feels a little bit better to almost come get that maybe approval from AHAB and then almost in January turn around, do those presentations, get that preliminary commitment, and then give us from January to May to work really, really hard to get all of our ducks in a row. And hopefully with that kind of buy-in from the city commission and departments. Yeah, a lot would be easier if the incentive just got put through. So the importance of that is really loud to me, but I wonder if maybe we add that in as a particular goal to maybe have a presentation to City Commission in January.
Okay.
Also, understanding there will be potentially two new commission members in there, but
Right.
having
Yeah.
that and maybe getting that approval to move forward. That way we also actually know ahead of like getting all of this done where commission and where collaborative departments are sitting. And then we can assess feasibility. Because also if it is going to take longer, if like a year or two feels like the standard that they can commit to, that might perhaps either say we need to do the same thing we're doing this year for our trust fund process and then kick this to 2028, or we're good to go. And I would prefer to maybe have that at the beginning of the year rather than, pushing something that is just not going to manifest in 2027 and then being, I don't know, in a scramble to figure out what we're going to do for 2027 funds. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I will see about getting something on the January agenda. And then just for a heads up for this committee as well. So since it would be a recommendation from the AHAB, then it would be you all actually making the presentation. And I would obviously be present, but it wouldn't be a staff recommendation. It would be you all leading that presentation in charge. So just think ahead about your other commitments and capacity to meet that timeline as well, if that seems reasonable to you.
Yeah. Can't speak for half of our subcommittee, but
well, we're the only ones here, so it only matters what we think.
yeah, I think as long as we put it in our timeline and like something as part of our work plan, to me, it's no different than all these other things we're committing to. It's just, if anything, for me, provides a little bit more certainty, and I feel way more comfortable making this it's a big shift. So if we can give at least everybody enough time to help us move forward in it, I feel better about that.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Are there any other tasks or things we need to establish before our next meeting? Okay.
Not that I can think of right now.
Cool. Yeah, I really think that helps us at least get deep into the first part of our work plan, 1, and then start really thinking about 2. Okay, so I guess we'll say that that's good for our tasks for next meeting. So we will move on to agenda category C, our calendar. So just calendar updates that our next AHAB regular meeting is September 11th, and then we will, as a subcommittee, reconvene September 17th. Leah, for the September 17th meeting, do you want our feedback on these RFPs ahead of time? Do you just want us to show up? I know this is like a less formal space than our regular meetings, so whatever gives you the least amount of work, I'm cool with.
Do you want us to prepare our own individual mini PowerPoint presentations and be ready to formally present our findings?
Yes, please. No, I think, if you have, I'll send out a document. If you all have it prepared by the time the agenda needs to be posted, it would be great to attach it to the agenda. Otherwise, you can just send it to me afterwards or share in the meeting and send to me to attach to the minutes.
And that deadline is the Friday before, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Yes, I think if we can establish the Friday before as our deadline just to get it in the agenda, then cool. Okay. Moving on to D, public comments. Are there any public comments? I do not see anybody in the chat, and we are not in person, so I will say we do not have any public comments today. So we'll move on to adjournment. It is 2:46, and we don't need motions. We don't vote here, so we're just going to adjourn the meeting.
Cool. You're amazing. Thank you both so much.
All right. Thank you
Bye.
both. Take
Bye.
care.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks, Marielle.
Bye. See ya.